Awesome.
All right.
Thanks. So I'm Jeremy Watson. I'm a group product manager here at GitLab. I'm sitting here talking with Jerome on the product analytics group, talking a little bit about kind of his future plans for product analytics as a category and as a group. And Jerome, you're just about to take me through this deck and talk a little bit about kind of what's on your roadmap.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jeremy. So what I'm trying to do here is put together a monthly update of what we're doing in product analytics. And product analytics touches a lot of different parts of the company right now. So I put together this overview slide. And with this overview slide, it sort of touches on what are the four main things that we do. We collect the data. Then with that data, we enable product to make better product decisions, and then we enable sales and customer success to have better customer conversations. And then with that collected data, we also try to make that data useful for customers. So in terms of collecting the data, Jeremy, we've gone through this in the past, but we first have a privacy policy that outlines what we can collect. Then we have privacy settings within the application to allow our users to basically look at what they're opting into and control those settings. Then we have our collection framework, which is our set of tools to actually collect the data. And this currently consists of Snowplow and Usage Ping. We've got our event dictionary, which is a single source of truth for all of our metrics and events. And we have an instrumentation step here, which is where our teams actually go in and do the instrumentation in the GitLab code base. Data availability, this step here covers the actual release of the tracking code, customers upgrading, a usage being generated, and it being sent back over to our versions application. And the data warehouse is where our versions application, which is our collector, actually collects the data and stores it in our data warehouse. And then we have data modeling step, which is where we take the raw data and we try to model it in a way that makes it easy for dashboarding. So that's all the collect data step. Any questions about this one so far?
No, it was helpful to hear you talk about data availability because I didn't know if that was like a specific discrete step where we need to take an action, but it's helpful to hear that it's kind of just a interim step where we've implemented the instrumentation. We're waiting for a number of steps to occur before we see it appear in the data warehouse. So that's helpful.
Yeah, so I debated about renaming data availability to be release, upgrade, usage ping generation, and then data collection. But I thought it might be summed up a little bit more easily in just data availability, but it does encompass all of those steps.
Yeah, nice. Thank you.
So once we have that data, then it goes down to the enable product step. And the enable product step is where we start building out dashboards. And with those dashboards and those charts, we start to add them into our performance indicator pages in our product handbook. We start to set targets against those. And we have, right now, we have monthly reviews for each of the sections, stages, and groups on how we're tracking against those targets. And then with that, we can also inform product improvements that we can make. So that's the enable product step here. The people or the teams that are involved here are product analytics, data, and the product managers. And the collect data is mostly product analytics and data teams doing that.
What do you consider product the sole responsible party for doing?
We're hoping to have product do everything within here, within enable product, and make it as self-serve as possible. When it comes to the collection of data part, I would say that product owns the event dictionary. You should sort of define your own events that you want to track. You should also have your team do the instrumentation. And then you should sort of follow along here to make sure that it's actually going all the way through. So I think I can probably update this slide to make it a little bit more clear exactly what a product manager's responsibility is in
Yeah.
this step.
Yeah, that might be really helpful. And it could just be simple like coloring the chevrons, like different colors to say like if it's red, this is something that product is the primary responsible party for. And so make sure that if you're a product manager, like familiarize yourself with exactly what we do here. And here's some links to some examples, but like you're the responsible party and like knowing how this works.
Exactly.
So that's really helpful. Because before there was debate on like, oh, is the data team responsible for like creating dashboards and querying for this data? And the answer is no, we want to like put that ownership on product because data doesn't have the capacity, and also we want to put that power in the hands of PMs.
Definitely, that's a good call out. I'll find a better way to outline that more clearly. The next step here is to enable sales. So we've collected this data and it's sitting in our data warehouse. Now we want to get this data into Salesforce and Gainsight and all the other sales systems so that our sales team can have conversations with the customers about, you know, what their usage is like and if they have the appropriate number of seats, if they have the appropriate plans, basically have those conversations to set our customers up for success. This starts with our sales system data feeds. Our data feeds we used to have a direct integration between the versions app here directly into Salesforce, but that integration wasn't working very well. There were issues where we would drop data along the way. So what we've done is we built a new integration between the data warehouse and Salesforce, where Salesforce reads directly from the data warehouse via a Salesforce dashboard. So that is working right now, and we have licensed data, which is now getting piped in to Salesforce. Anyways, once we set up that data feed, we then have our Salesforce dashboards that are built. And those dashboards are things like, basically we're trying to come up with customer health scores based off of usage of different stage adoption, which are all kept in Salesforce. And from there, we actually replicate the similar sort of dashboards in Gainsight as well for customer success to use. And both of those help drive customer conversations.
Sure, makes a ton of sense. So those are the primary tools that folks are going to be using in the future. Because I know at one point CS was going into version of GitLab.com and like looking directly in there. So that's not the case anymore. Salesforce and Gainsight are really the source of truth for the types of data that sales and CS wants. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly.
Great.
We want sales and CS to be able to stay within their systems that they use every day and have the customer data at their fingertips, rather than having to go over to another system and do a lookup and try to manually stitch it all together.
Yeah, cool.
The last part is making this data useful for customers. And this is really the part that I wanted to talk to you about, which is how product analytics and managed team works together. So we've collected this data about how people are using GitLab. And now we want to make sure that we can resurface this back over to those team members. So, or sorry, not team members, resurface this back over to the customers so that they understand, you know, what parts of GitLab am I using? How are people actually using it? What sort of things can I adopt in the future to, you know, increase my DevOps cycle times, or sorry, shorten my DevOps cycle times. So we have various ways which we can make this data useful for customers. I think you're probably a lot more familiar with this part than I am, but I've added just a couple of them here, which is the value stream management, the DevOps score. But what I wanted to do today was have a conversation about what this looks like here, and what sort of things are happening within Manage, what sort of things are happening within Manage Analytics, as the team's currently called, and what sort of things you're planning to do in the future.
Yeah, sure. I can talk openly and just kind of give you a quick overview of kind of what we're kind of investing in at the moment. I'll do that by considering kind of like two large categories of analytics that we're kind of currently investing in. And one way of thinking about the managed analytics group is not really to think about analytics, and analytics is an overloaded term that we've discussed in other issues, where immediately brings this, you know, like charts and dashboards to mind. That's not really the focus of the group. Focus of the group is to understand like how to optimize my software delivery process. Like we have organizations that invest a lot of money and time into using GitLab, and being able to help them ship software more quickly and get more out of the tool will attract more usage of GitLab and keep them using the product for longer. So that is like in a nutshell kind of how I see that. So one opportunity is that we have like not addressed in GitLab historically is understanding your DevOps kind of adoption journey at an instance level. So right now we're investing in kind of two key areas. Number one is for any instance, regardless of license and regardless of tier, down to core, we want to be able to provide a roadmap for how you should be how you could be using GitLab for how they can kind of adopt different stages and adopt different areas of the product in order for them to fall in love with GitLab more, but also just get more out of the tool so that we're showing people and educating them on DevOps best practices so they can reduce their cycle time and ship software more quickly. So we want to have like this basic kind of guidance for all instances in terms of how to do that. So that's number one. Number two is for the large organization, for the enterprise that has thousands of users and is using GitLab in a paid tier. Those organizations we see typically have like very specific goals that they kind of want to be able to like manage and maintain, and those are either specific to like specific objectives that they might have, or like here at GitLab we have engineering efficiency goals or like increased throughput, and those are self-imposed, or they could be kind of mandated by an outside framework or compliance framework that says, we have to make sure that this is happening, and we want to be able to track that. So there's a deeper dive in terms of like instance level reporting, where we want to be able to enable organizations to like define custom segments to say like this business unit are these people and there's this like set of like subgroups in this instance, and we want to set a goal for that in terms of like code quality or the number of the amount of the throughput that group is shipping. So those are the kind of areas that we're really focused in on right now. At a later time, we want to really double down into the usage of usage paying in terms of benchmarking, where once we get the basic reporting right, now we want to be able to use the information we get from other GitLab instances to help you benchmark to other instances that are similar size and operating in similar industries to really like double down on like how you can be shipping more quickly. So that's kind of the high level of what we kind of are planning on doing. There is like a subset or a problem where we need to be able to take usage ping that we're sending out, that organizations are sending out, and make them more comfortable with it, allow them to use that information, see that information, to visualize that information. And that's not something that we've spent a ton of time thinking about how that knits together with the first feature that I mentioned, which is like instance level DevOps adoption for all instances. So I think that there's we haven't, but I think we haven't invested in that as heavily because usage ping has kind of exploded to a certain degree in terms of the amount of information that's in it. So we wanted to start with like, let's take a look at this narrower use case around like, nurturing your DevOps adoption, you're like making sure people understand how they're adopting GitLab, and then seeing if we have the right data in our usage ping versus let's just take the usage ping and then just like allow you to visualize whatever the heck you want with it. So there's probably some work that we need to do in how we make usage ping interesting and more valuable for customers, but that's kind of the high level right now.
That makes a lot of sense. I think a good part that my team's starting to work on are the privacy settings. Mm-hmm. And I think that overlaps a bit with what's happening within what you were talking about, the instance level sort of usage. But I'm thinking that this could be sort of tackled in sort of separate ways. So what we're thinking about the privacy settings, and this is very early. We are really just in the ideation phase of this right now, is basically like a privacy panel, if you will, where you've got toggles of what you are turning on and turning off. And within that privacy panel, you also have the equivalent of just a window that shows, this is all of the data that I have actually sent back over to GitLab Inc. So you can see, this is exactly what your usage ping looked like. And these are all of the different pieces which GitLab Inc. has. And I think that'll make our customers a lot more comfortable because they're able to actually see what data is actually being sent over to GitLab. Mm-hmm. And hopefully that will increase, opt-in rates.
Right.
So that's a very high level vision of just privacy settings. Know basically what you're opting into. And at the same time also know what data is being sent over.
That's it's interesting you say that, because that was what I expected to see in the final line of that slide, um, which instead of make data useful for customers, in terms of the product analytics group, I expected it to be like drive adoption of opt-in of usage paying, basically, which is like you talked about, the privacy settings being an area of investment for like the team. Right now, like there's not a lot of incentive that we give to customers to get them to opt into usage paying. Now we have DevOps score and we have cohorts as like the only things that you get when you enable usage paying. I really don't know why we picked those two things, like except for DevOps score, which has some benchmarking, like there's some specific reasons, like because we use data from usage ping in that feature. Cohorts, I'm not sure. And I feel like it would be an opportunity for the PM in this role to like be a specific, like to really understand, here's exactly why people aren't like, opting into usage ping more often. And here are the things that we need to do and engage other teams like my own to help drive some of that. So it's interesting to hear that, like, I totally agree that the privacy panel would be a huge driver potentially, but a lot of it, a lot of those motivating, a lot of that is from what I hear from users, they just lack motivation because they don't see what they kind of get out of it. But I'm sure you understand the nuances of why people don't opt in a lot better than I do.
I mean, I think we're just at the start of it. I think what we need to start with is transparency first. And I think we need to build out features to make it really transparent. These are the settings, this is what data it is, and make it written all in plain English, or whatever language you're using GitLab in.
Certainly. Cool.
Now, the part about making it useful for customers, you mentioned in order to do the DevOps score, or in order to do cohorts, we need to pass that usage ring data back into the instance, right?
Correct. Well, no, right now that cohorts is it's a feature that kind of tells you a little bit about the number of users that are joining your instance, and provides some retention data, how many of those actually returned in subsequent months. And I don't think that there's anything in that feature that makes it an inherent requirement to have usage ping turned on. I don't think that we use it in the feature itself, but I think in version 8 of GitLab, we decided that if you wanted to use cohorts, you needed to turn usage ping on. So for some reason, we've gated it by enabling usage ping. And that's all that I'm aware of, but I don't know why.
Got it. Okay. I know that we're just coming up on time here, but I think there's a lot more to explore with the incoming PM for product analytics, hopefully driving a lot of this roadmap, but also the existing PM for the analytics group.
Right.
Or is it the analytics stage? No, it's analytics
group. Analytics group, right. Yeah. Definitely.
I think if we can sort of build a bridge between both of them, they'll be able to sort of discuss and hash out what this roadmap looks like going forward, and what sort of things which, we're building a lot more things into usage ping right now. A lot of that will be kept on the instance itself and can probably be repackaged into a lot of these features which your team's building.
Right.
But at the same time, we are building this data set of all of these, what DevOps looks like across, thousands of instances, right? So can we anonymize that and surface this back over to these instances to see how they're benchmarking?
I see. So it sounds like what would be most helpful for you is to at least have a high level understanding of how the group wants to use usage data in the future, so that maybe you can kind of work at the PM and create your requirements and your privacy policies around that. That's kind of what I'm hearing right now. Is that the most helpful thing that I can kind of do right now, or is there something else I'm missing?
I think that's probably it. I think you described it well.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, we can I can definitely do that. Cool. We'll add that to our direction page then, and I will link that so that when the PM kind of arrives, you can consider that as part of like the requirements that you kind of take on. Because like I mentioned, I think that we do want to. There is anonymization, obviously, that we want to do, but we want to be able to make it so that if you are a large financial company, you are seeing you know, blobs and usage data packets that are like relevant to you, so that you're not seeing like a game company or a, you know, tiny little like dev shop that like can move a little bit faster than a 2,000 person organization. So
Mhm.
how we want to slice that data, I think we'll definitely define that a little bit better, and hopefully that'll be informative.
That makes a lot of sense. I currently have a weekly sync or a bi-weekly sync set up with the customer success team, where we talk about getting this data in their hands. But they're now starting to provide feedback about, you know, how can we make this data useful um,
Mm,
uh, for our customers, which is exactly the feature which your team's building out.
yeah.
Would it make sense to include yourself in there?
I'd love to take a look at the agenda. It's totally possible. Feel free to add me as optional,
Okay.
and we'll go from there.
Okay. That sounds good.
Awesome.
We'll leave it there then.
All right. Great seeing you. Thanks for the time. It's great catching up with you, Jerome.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. Take
Cheers.
care.
Bye.